Hi everyone, welcome to the 2021 Bradford Literary Festival. I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm Francesca Simon, and some of you will know me as the author of the Horrid Henry books. And I'm here to talk to you about myself and how I became a writer, about my books, and particularly about my new book, which is Two Terrible Vikings. And first of all, I became a writer after my son was born. And we started reading a lot together, and I just got flooded with ideas. And that is really how it happened. And then my sixth book was Horrid Henry, which I think you all know. But since then, I've gone on to write about Norse myths, Norse mythology, and then Two Terrible Vikings arrived. So let me tell you a little bit about Two Terrible Vikings and how I got the idea for that, because kids are, people are always asking me how I get my ideas. And I love Norse mythology. I love stories about the gods. I love the sagas. And I also, as you all know, love stories about children who behave really badly. And for Two Terrible Vikings, I just combined these two things that I really love, because Vikings are pirates. And this way I get to think about what it would be like to live in that cold world with ogres and trolls. So just to give you a little bit of a flavor of Two Terrible Vikings, it's about twins, Hack and Whack, who are, as their names sound, and their gang of friends. There's Bitey Bitey, their wolf cub, and Dirty Ulf, the girl who hates baths, and Twisty Pants, the big braggart, and also the goody-goody Elsa Goldhair, who's more like us because she's always saying things like, that's naughty and you mustn't do that. So to give you a flavor of this book, I'm going to read you the first story, which is Elsa Goldhair's birthday party. And there may be screaming, I do warn you. And just to get into the mood, I'm going to put on my original Viking helmet, which, as you can see, is many centuries old. Right, everyone ready to listen? Elsa Goldhair's birthday party. Terrible screams came from the longhouse at the far end of the village. Hack stopped swinging her sword. Whack stopped swinging his axe. Bitey Bitey, their wolf cub, stopped chewing Dad's new leather boot. Ah! That sounds like Dirty Ulf, said Whack. Ah! Ah! Help! Help! Save me! That is Dirty Ulf, said Hack. She waved her sword. We have to rescue her. Whack waved his axe. It must be an ogre, he yelled, running. Or a troll, shouted Hack. We're Hack and Whack on the attack, they bellowed, as they raced across the turf towards the screams, leaping over chickens and crashing into goats. Bitey Bitey ran after them, howling and yowling. The blood-curdling shrieks seemed to be coming from a tub on the porch outside Dirty Ulf's longhouse. There was something gurgling and spluttering and squealing and splashing inside the black water. Dirty Ulf's mother stood there, clutching a bar of soap. Dirty Ulf is having a bath, she said. I don't need a bath, gasped Dirty Ulf, poking her head above the tub. I had one last year. Dirty Ulf's mum shoved her under the steaming water again. Why is she having a bath? Said Whack. Poor Dirty Ulf. No one hated water as much as she did. Because she's going to Elsa Goldhair's birthday party, said her mum. And you know how fussy those parents are. Ah! Oh, said Hack. Oh, said Whack. This was the first time they'd heard about a party. Now go away, said Dirty Ulf's mother. Nothing to see here. Stop screaming, Dirty Ulf, she screamed, attacking Ulf's ears with a spoon. No, howled Dirty Ulf. Hack and Whack headed home. What's a birthday party? Said Hack. I don't know, said Whack. Birthday, birthday, the day you're born? Why would you have a party for that? Whack shrugged. Elsa's weird. Elsa liked sharing. Elsa liked playing quietly. Elsa liked telling everyone how naughty they were. Elsa thought she was a grown-up. Well, I don't want to go, said Hack. Me neither, said Whack. It would probably be really boring. Really, really boring, said Hack. Lucky we weren't invited. Yeah, said Whack. Lucky. Hack and Whack were just about to enter their longhouse when they heard loud voices coming from within. Hack put a finger to her lips. Mom and Dad are talking about us, she hissed. Hack and Whack crept close to the wattled wall next to the woodpile and cupped their ears. Hack and Whack are the worst Vikings in the village, said Mum. The very worst, said Dad. Hack and Whack beamed. But at least they're not like Elsa Goldhair. Thank Thor, said Dad. I would die of shame to have such a goody-goody butterface, hoity-toity salmon flapper as my daughter. Gods forbid, said Mum. Did you hear? They caught her sharing last week, said Dad. Sharing? No! Her poor parents! Yes, sharing. Braggy Breadnose saw her. That girl will come to a bad end, said Dad. Glad she's not our daughter, said Mum. I blame the parents. Not like us. Firm but fair, said Dad. Elsa's a terrible example. Thank Thor Hack and Whack weren't invited to her birthday party, said Mum. I wouldn't let them go even if they had been invited. Elsa Goldhair might influence them, and the next thing we'd know they'd stop fighting and quarreling and playing with their swords. Hack and Whack had heard enough. Mum and Dad didn't want them to go. We want to go to Elsa's birthday party, they yelled, bursting through the door. And you'll have to get the book to find out what happens. So, why do I like writing about Vikings? What is it about Vikings that appeals to me so much? Why do I like this part of history, which is so many hundreds of years ago? And there are lots of reasons. As you know, I like writing about wild children, and Vikings were pirates. And it's very fun, particularly after the kind of year we've all had, to write about children who can track trolls and run off to the mountains. But because they're Vikings, they can do things like steal boats and go and raid islands. So they have this huge amount of freedom, which is a lot of fun. The other reason I love writing about Vikings is that I really love Norse mythology and writing about a world where people believe in the gods Odin and Thor and Freya. And I like the wildness and the mystery of it. So I get to combine lots of things that I love, mythology and naughty children. And I crashed them together, and that's how I got the book. I mean, this is also a world where there were creatures called berserkers, which is where we get our word to go berserk. So you can imagine what a berserker was like. They were wild, crazy men. People thought that nothing could harm them, and they wore bearskins and they roared. And in fact, the second Terrible Vikings book is going to be Hack and Whack and the Berserker. And his name is Grunt Iron Skull. Because that is the other thing about Vikings, is that they do have very fun names. And so I used a lot of real giant names like Iron Skull, and then I added the Grunt. But it's a lot of fun making up names like Dirty Ulf or Twisty Pants or any of these names. And some of them are in fact real names. So, you know, in order to write about a world that's different from ours, you do have to do some research, which I like doing because I studied Anglo-Saxon and Old English at university. And so I enjoy reading sagas and I enjoy the research. And one of the fun things about doing research is that you learn all kinds of interesting facts. For example, you can see my lovely Viking helmet, and we have these horns. In fact, Vikings did not have horns on their helmets, but it's so much fun to draw. All artists like to draw them with horns, but they really didn't have them. And some other interesting facts that I learned is that Vikings didn't go to school. There were no schools in Viking times, and almost nobody could read or write. And it was very much an oral society, so that people recited stories. And every year they would gather at something called the Thingvellir, and someone would stand up and recite all the laws. So it was very much about listening, and it was not about writing, and it was not about reading. My favorite Viking fact, my favorite Norse fact, is something that you use without even knowing it. You use Norse words every single day. Every time you say Tuesday, that comes from the god Tyr, so it was Tyr's Day. Wednesday is Woden's Day, which means the day of Woden. Thursday, of course, is Thor's Day. And Friday would be Frey's Day. So our days of the week still have within them the names of all those Norse gods. And I didn't know that until I started doing the research. But that is absolutely my very, very favorite fact about the Vikings. And one other, we all think of Vikings as being pirates and raiding and being raiders and robbers. But in fact, they were also farmers. And they spent a lot of their time farming. In fact, when the Vikings came to England, that's one of the reasons they settled. So they were farmers for most of the year and pirates like during the summer. That was like their summer holiday. They would farm, and then their summer break would be that they would just go raiding and pirating and stealing as much stuff as they could. So when I was creating these books, I started thinking about what kind of children, what would it be like to be a child, a Viking child? Like, what would the parents be like? What would their home life be like? And they would have lived in a village in what was called a longhouse. It was one big room where you just had benches along the sides, and you slept on the benches and you ate in that big room. There would be no windows. A big fire would be burning in the middle, so it was really smoky. Your animals would probably be in the room with you, so you can imagine just what an incredibly smelly world it was. But I was also thinking, because basically Viking parents want their children to grow up to be fierce warriors, so they would not want children who were like Elsa Goldhair. They would not want little, good, quiet, shy, timid children. They would want fierce children. They would like it if their children got into fights. They would want their children to be the biggest, the bravest, the strongest. It's probably, if you were the school bully, if you had school, your parents would clap you on the back and say, well done. But on the other hand, they're also children. So I was thinking that, the parents would say things like, no axes at the table. And, eat your whale blubber, because they would still want their children to do chores. So then you think, okay, what kind of chores would a Viking child have to do? And they would have to fetch eggs and look after animals and go dig up leaks and wash clothes and help sew and go fishing. So I've tried to use our world and then ask myself questions about, well, what would it be like if you were a child? How can I transform what it's like to live in a family, but imagine that family living such a long time ago, but also to have it be very funny, so that you have someone like Twisty Pants who's always bragging. So if someone says, I think there might be an ogre, he's always bragging about how many ogres he's killed. So I hope that they are like children that we know, but just if they were living at that time. And I think you might have heard me say, I ask myself questions. I ask myself, what would it be like to live in that time? What might a Viking parent say? And that is one of the ways that I create my stories, is I ask myself questions. And the answer to those questions is the story. And I wanted to give you all some more writing tips so that hopefully this will help you write better stories. But one of my first tip is to keep a notebook. And in that notebook, you write down any ideas that hit you, a little bit of dialogue, anything at all. It's just for you. It's your notebook. But when it's time to write a story, you can go back and see, oh, that was interesting. I remember that little story. So that will also help you. The other thing is, as I've said, to ask yourself questions about your characters. Who are they? What do they have for breakfast? Where do they live? Ask questions to help draw out your ideas. Another good tip for a story is that you don't have to write beginning, middle, and end. You can write end, beginning, middle, because what happens when you write is that everybody's great at starting stories. Everybody. And most people are terrible at finishing them because you get stuck. So you might want to try writing the ending first. But you have to think of a story as a journey. And a journey is where things happen. So a question to ask is, how is my character different at the end from the beginning? So quite simply, you could have maybe you wanted to write a story about a dragon who was scared to fly. So the end of the story is the dragon decides he would rather swim. The dragon works out that he's not scared anymore. The middle bit is what happened, the twist. What's made the dragon go from this to this? That is your story. A story has to be about change. And another really great way of coming up with ideas for stories, because I'm as bad as anybody. If someone said to me right now, come up with a story, I would go, and I wouldn't have any ideas at all. But one way to help yourself get ideas is to think about all the different kinds of stories there are, like animal stories, school stories, ghost stories, fairy stories, detective stories, adventure, myth, romance, ghosts, sports, animals, and combine two of them. And the weirder, the better. So you could have an animal sports day, or you could have a ghost romance, or you could have an outer space school. Do you see what I mean? That you can take different types of stories and put them together. And if you're really being wild, you can try 3 of those, combine 3 of those ideas, family, magic, and space, or, animal, sports, and ghosts. All of that will immediately send you on a journey that will be different and fun. So if I was going to give you all a challenge, it would be to come up with a story based on combining 2 or more type of stories, and see what you come up with. And when you write the story, ask yourself, what does your character want? And what's stopping them from getting what they want? And at the end, how are they different at the end from the beginning? And I think if you try to structure a story in that way, I think you'll really find that your stories take on a lot of life and fun. And, when I'm writing, I do exactly the same thing. I can't write until I know what Hack and Whack want. For example, so in the first story that I read you, they want to go to Elsa's birthday party. So the story is, how do they get there? What happens when they're at the party? They want to track a troll. Do they find the troll? What's stopping them tracking the troll? They want to go raiding. How do they get a boat? So all of these questions will help you come up with your story and also come up with your characters. So I want to wish all of you happy reading and happy writing. Bye.